If you were alive in February of 1990, you got your picture taken by a camera 6 billion kilometers away. Hiding in this pale blue dot is you and me and every other human who has ever lived. But you'd never know any of us were here just from looking at that Voyager 1 space probe image. And at that point, Voyager hadn't even made it to interstellar space yet. So you might be thinking, how could aliens beyond our solar system ever find us? Well, it turns out we have left a few marks in the universe, both on purpose and by accident, that could announce our presence to anyone out there with the right know-how. As we are recording this video, Voyager 1 is not only the most distant probe that humans have ever shot into space, it's also still active, albeit barely, and it's technically been in interstellar space since 2012, although the special boundary it crossed is still well within our sun's gravitational influence. But it's not the only one out there. Voyager 1 is currently one of 5 human-made artifacts that will eventually sail into other parts of the galaxy. Its sister probe, Voyager 2, entered interstellar space in 2018, and 2 of the Pioneer spacecraft are headed that way too. Also, the New Horizons mission that flew by Pluto in 2015 is on track to join them sometime in the 2040s. New Horizons is carrying a handful of knickknacks along with its scientific gear, things like a postage stamp, quarters, and 2 American flags. But the Voyager and Pioneer probes all contain carefully crafted messages to extraterrestrials. Even though they were mainly designed to explore the outer planets in the 1970s and 80s, scientists knew these probes would leave the solar system one day and added messages just in case they ever got intercepted. The Pioneer probes each have a small metal plaque engraved with 2 naked humans and a diagram showing the position of our solar system. Meanwhile, the Voyagers each carry an actual pressed record, as well as instructions on how to play it. An alien that successfully plays the record will treat themselves to various Earth sounds, music from cultures around the world, and greetings in different languages, as well as a bunch of images encoded in analog form. But even though NASA did put tons of effort into crafting these messages, it is extremely unlikely that aliens will ever intercept them. At the speeds they're going, it'll take tens of thousands of years for any of these probes to even approach another solar system. Even then, it would be nearly impossible for extraterrestrials to detect these dark ships the size of a car against the black backdrop of outer space. But probes are far from the only things we are sending out into the universe. Humans have been broadcasting radio and TV shows since the early 20th century. To beam those signals to your house, they're transmitted in the form of electromagnetic waves. More specifically, radio waves. And these days, radio waves are also streaming from our cell phone towers, transmitting our calls and texts. No matter how or when we created them, all of our radio signals are now racing into the universe at the speed of light. Forever. Which raises the question, if there are aliens out there with the technology to detect radio waves, could they eavesdrop on us? In theory, maybe. It's possible that aliens 75 light years away could be enjoying early episodes of I Love Lucy, but in practice, this is highly unlikely. Radio signals weaken pretty quickly, just like how a source of visible light gets dimmer the farther away it is, and there are a bunch of other natural radio sources screaming into the universe that can easily drown ours out. Plus, when it comes to our radio and TV programs, the actual content of our broadcasts would probably be too weak for any aliens to detect, because those signals are super weak. See, when a station sends out a broadcast, it doesn't send out the content of the show directly. It needs to use what's called a carrier frequency to deliver the show to your TV. In a way, it's kind of like the mail truck, and the content of the show is all the stuff inside. But that carrier frequency is many times stronger than the frequencies that make up the program itself. So while aliens probably couldn't tune into old sitcoms, they might be able to detect the carrier signals that transported those sitcoms. Assuming there are aliens with technology similar to ours, one 2025 study suggests that radio leakage from Earth could be detectable up to 4 light years away. That's just shy of the distance to the next closest star, Proxima Centauri, which, fun fact, does have at least one planet in the habitable zone. So if there are aliens hanging out over there, and if they are in fact spying on our solar system, they might recognize some artificial signals coming from Earth with a 4-year delay. And if they've been studying us for long enough, they might have noticed a change in our habits, such as people switching from analog TV to streaming platforms. But they probably could not tune into the news or binge watch reality TV, which, honestly, is probably for the best. I'd rather they listen to the music rather than see what we're getting up to on TV. Also, just trying to picture what music aliens would really like. Like, my brain says David Bowie, but it's probably Chappell Roan. That said, if any of these hypothetical aliens are listening for radio signals at just the right time, they could potentially pick up signals that we have sent into space on purpose. For example, in 1999, after decades of listening for alien signals and getting literal radio silence, a small group of astronomers made the unilateral decision to phone ETs home themselves. They invented a whole alphabet of symbols to represent numbers, mathematical symbols, chemical elements, and all sorts of other scientific concepts. Then, they crafted an elaborate message to serve as a sort of Rosetta Stone for understanding Earth. It included an intro to our math and sciences, a map of our solar system, and drawings of naked humans. We really love sending aliens naked pictures. That's like one of our things. So finally, they translated the whole message into a binary code that could be represented by 2 different radio frequencies, and used a radio transmitter in Crimea to beam it toward 5 separate star systems. The first was about 69 light-years away in the constellation Cygnus, which means that it won't arrive until 2068, and if any Cygnans decide to send a message back, we won't get that response until 2137. As this message started its interstellar journey, the scientific community argued about whether sending any message to aliens was a good idea. After all, we don't have a great track record when it comes to civilizations meeting each other on Earth. But good idea or not, it was definitely not the last time we tried to send a message to extraterrestrials. There have been more than a dozen messages beamed into space since then, and not all of them are exactly serious works of science. In 2008, NASA transmitted the Beatles song Across the Universe toward Polaris, the current North Star, and Doritos paid a European research organization to beam an advertisement toward the Big Dipper. I mean, no one can resist Doritos. Just like the message to Cygnus, all of these messages are still in transit, so no one has called us back yet. But while we've only been sending radio signals into space since the 20th century, there is another signal, or set of signals, that human civilizations have been producing for much longer. Ever since the Industrial Revolution kicked off, human technology has altered our atmosphere in some very non-subtle ways. These are called techno-signatures, and I'm not just talking about all the CO2 we've pumped into our atmosphere. To aliens, that alone might not be especially interesting because you don't need life to get CO2. I mean, Venus's atmosphere is almost all CO2 with no help from living things, we think. But other compounds we pump into the atmosphere aren't so common in nature, like the chlorofluorocarbons used in refrigerants and cleaning supplies. These are combinations of carbon, chlorine, and fluorine that basically never form naturally and could be a pretty dead giveaway to any aliens spying on Earth. Assuming, that is, that they are advanced enough to analyze the spectrum of light passing through Earth's atmosphere, and also that they are aligned correctly to see that. A spectrum is what you get when you pass light through something like a prism that splits it into all of its constituent colors. And not just the stuff in the visible rainbow either, the invisible wavelengths too. The molecules in Earth's atmosphere absorb some of those wavelengths, creating little dark lines in the spectrum, and that pattern of dark lines reveals which elements and compounds are doing the absorbing. Spectra are how we figure out what planets' atmospheres are made of, and a species with the right technology could do the same to us. There are tens of billions of planets in our galaxy that could potentially study Earth this way, but if they're more than a few hundred light years away, they won't see much. Even assuming their technology is better than ours, the most obvious technosignatures have only been in our atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution. That light hasn't gotten very far yet in galactic terms. But if you want to be obnoxiously optimistic, some research has measured an uptick in atmospheric carbon dioxide and methane as early as 6,000 years ago. Scientists aren't sure if these higher levels can be tied to human activity, but this was a point in history where agriculture was taking hold around the world. Forests were being converted to farmland on a large scale, which absorbs less carbon. Meanwhile, livestock may have been farting and burping out that extra methane. But even if humans really are to blame for for those ancient measurements, they're also probably too subtle for anyone 6,000 light years away to detect. Still, it's fun to think about just how far away aliens could detect life on Earth, especially when you realize it doesn't take an advanced species to alter the makeup of the atmosphere. Much simpler life forms have been doing it for far longer than humans could ever hope to. Ever since plants colonized the land 500 million years ago, they changed the nature of the light that our planet reflects back into space. Photosynthesizing plants absorb a lot of visible light, and they strongly reflect infrared light. That light has now traveled well beyond our galaxy and crossed through hundreds of thousands of other galaxies. So if aliens were out there with powerful enough telescopes to study Earth's spectrum, they would see a steep curve right around the point where the light goes from visible to infrared. Astronomers call it a red edge. Of course, if aliens don't have plants of their own on their planet, or if those plants don't do photosynthesis, maybe they won't have any idea what they're looking at, but they might at least clock it as something unusual. And that is not the only sign of these plants in our atmosphere. Here on Earth, photosynthesizing plants also pump out huge amounts of oxygen. Some of that oxygen also goes through reactions in the atmosphere to create ozone. But if it weren't for plants, as well as other photosynthesizing organisms like algae, the oxygen in our atmosphere would disappear pretty quickly because of how it reacts with other molecules. The fact that it stays at high levels alongside other molecules it would normally react with is a good sign that something alive is constantly topping off Earth's oxygen supply. These bio and techno signatures would be detectable from far across the galaxy to a species with the right tools. But if aliens ever did get suspicious enough to take a closer look and send a spacecraft to the edge of our solar system, they might see more than that pale blue dot that Voyager captured. If it were outfitted with both a telescope and a spectroscope, a tool for splitting light into spectra, they might be able to see something even more interesting than all of the molecules we and our technology have pumped into the atmosphere. If they looked at our planet's night side, they might also pick up some light from our cities. A lot of that light comes from sodium street lamps, so that would have a telltale signature in the spectroscope. And any aliens that are at least as advanced as we are would be able to tell that that is artificial. Earth would still be a glowing smudge from that distance, but they would know that we're down here, ready to say, we're not really ready for first contact yet. Can you maybe do next Thursday?